Juggernaut.
Hello and welcome to my video. I heard some news and I had to comment tonight. You may have heard that the NES Classic that Nintendo released at Christmas is kind of, well, it's gone. They've stopped continuing production of it. The system is now in the hands of the scalpers, and yeah, if you haven't got one now, chances are, unless you're going to pay a few £100, you're not going to get one. However, the reason apparently that Nintendo stopped production of the system is because they're ramping up production of a new system called the SNES Mini, due to be released this Christmas. And if that is true, that's very exciting indeed. There are so many great games on the Super Nintendo for a whole width and breadth of different genres. My mind boggles as to what games are actually going to be on there. So I put a little list together of games that I think will be on the SNES Mini, if it's such a thing exists. Based on the NES Classic, there were 12 licensed games from a selection of developers, as well as Nintendo's first party stuff. Now, there weren't many violent or adult themed games on the NES Classic Mini, so I've bared that in mind too. And I've split these games into categories: games that I think will be guaranteed to be on the system, games that I think will likely be on the system, games that could possibly be on the machine, and games that I don't think will be. Very unlikely that they will be, no matter how much I'd love to see them. For some reason, whether that's licensing or violence or what have you, I don't think we'll see them. So, without further ado, here are the games that I think will grace the SNES Mini, if such a thing is real. You can't have a SNES Classic without Super Mario World, the game that started it all for the Super Nintendo and the Super Famicom. Super Mario World really opened up a lot of people's eyes into what was truly capable from a 16-bit machine, not only in terms of the visual style, the graphics, the special effects, but also in terms of depth and breadth of gameplay, the amount of animation, the amount of different characters you can add, different play styles, the extra memory of the system could give to a player. Super Mario World is an absolute shoo-in for a SNES Classic. And if you're going to throw in Super Mario World, well, you may as well throw in Super Mario World and Super Mario All-Stars. This was released in a multi-cartridge format later on in the SNES life. They were released separately initially, but hey, if you're going to do it, you might as well go the whole hog, right? You might as well have a massive selection of Nintendo games under one big Super Mario All-Stars and World banner. And why not? I mean, the games are great. You've got Super Mario 1, you've got Super Mario Bros. 2, you've got Super Mario Bros. 2 The Lost Levels, which was Super Mario 2 in Japan, you've got Super Mario Bros. 3, and of course you'll have the aforementioned Super Mario World in there in one delightful, juicy, wonderful platforming package. Perfect as a starting up library for a SNES Classic. But where do you go from here, I hear you ask? Well, you take to the skies in Pilot Wings, the game that really showcased the Super Nintendo Mode 7 style sprite scaling. It really gave us a sense of depth that no other system really did regularly at the time. And it's a really fun, unique, interesting, original title. You start off with a small selection of activities you can do, skydiving and biplane riding. As you go forward through the levels, you've got jetpacks that you have to control, and it's all really just training for the main mission, which is at the end of the game, where you guide an attack helicopter to blow up this base on this island somewhere and extract some hostages. I think there were hostages or information, but who gives a crap what it was. What it was a great deal of fun. Pilot Wings has to be on a SNES Classic. And sticking to a vehicular theme, what would a SNES Classic be without Super Mario Kart? Probably the finest kart game ever to grace a console. Super Mario Kart just really busted open the kart racing genre thanks to the aforementioned Mode 7 style scaling, but Also, it had amazing track layouts, a really fun variety of characters, a battle mode that you and your friend could play against each other in if you were bored of racing, and it was just the entire package. There were unlockable levels, it had a real challenge, it had a real good difficulty curve as well. Starts off simple and slow, and then you work your way up to the infamous Rainbow Road level. It has to be on the SNES Classic, without fail. You know what else has to be on the SNES Classic without fail? A Legend of Zelda, A Link to the Past has to be on there. One of the finest RPGs ever for one of the most beloved series of all times is on the Nintendo's is. Zelda is a masterclass in RPG. You think you get to the end of the game, and then you find out that you've only looked at the overworld. There is actually an underworld underneath it. It was a massive, massive, massive map to explore. Brilliant dungeon puzzles, great graphics for the time, perfect controls for a game of this genre. It was just absolutely magical, and it hasn't aged a day since it was first launched. It's got to be there. It has to be. I will eat my own ball bag if it's not on a SNES Classic. I don't really want to eat my own ball bag. I'd prefer to kick somebody else's ball bag in Street Fighter 2, one of the quintessential SNES games, one of the games that really put the Super Nintendo on the map. At the time, it looked like a virtually arcade-perfect conversion of a super white-hot arcade behemoth. And the Super Nintendo control on the D-pad and the controller felt wonderful. It's just a quintessential console game of that era. Capcom have been very good with licensing of the Street Fighter games and other games in their library for the NES Classic, so there is a very, 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 very good chance that they would love to see Street Fighter 2 on the SNES Mini, and I would love to see it equally so. Oh, and by the way, when I say Street Fighter 2, I mean it could either be Street Fighter 2, it could be Street Fighter 2 Turbo, or it could even possibly be Super Street Fighter 2. If we're really lucky, we may see all three variants, and that would be super duper awesome. And we go from the king of 2D fighters to the pioneer of 3D Super FX gaming. Star Fox stroke Starwing, depending on where you live, was another monster hit for the Super Nintendo, and it would quite frankly be cruel of Nintendo to deny new players the experience of guiding Fox McCloud and his flying brethren going through and defeating the evil Andros. Star Fox Starwing was mind-blowing for those of us who didn't have PCs or computers at the time, to see these 3D graphics just blowing up, coming to life, and being so smooth and so slick and so generally freaking awesome was great. And Star Fox, even though it may be a little bit slow by today's standards, may look a little plain, it still has its charm, and it's still definitely worth playing, so I would love to see it on a SNES Classic, and I think Nintendo would do the right thing and put that game there front and centre. Whether they'll release Star Fox 2, however, and that's less likely. I don't think we'll be seeing Star Fox 2. It never came out of prototype form, even though it was complete. But you never know. Releasing Star Fox 1, they may do a historical kind of throw you a bone deal and say, well, here's the unfinished Star Fox 2 as a major selling point for the SNES Classic, if the original SNES games weren't a big enough selling point to begin with. And if you found Star Fox or Star Wings frame rate a little bit slow, well, you can speed right back up again with F-Zero, another early Super Nintendo game. Very good, it's aged extremely well. At first, I never really liked F-Zero because I didn't like the way it kind of swung around corners, but once you get a feel for the way it controls, it's a very, very satisfying experience, and it's one that everybody should play. It is a key part of Nintendo history. It's a key part of the SNES's bloodline. In my opinion, F-Zero will absolutely be on the SNES Classic. Do you know what else I think is integral to the Super Nintendo's bloodline that I think, to be honest, people would riot in the streets if it wasn't released on the SNES Classic? Super Metroid. What a game. Metroidvania. This game single-handedly spawned a whole new genre or subgenre of platform gaming, you know? Super Metroid is brilliantly realised. It's got a superb map layout. Exploration is rewarded at every turn. Visuals are astounding for the time. Gameplay is tight. Speed is silky smooth and wonderful. There are lovely graphical effects with rotation. There are transparencies. There's so many different ways that your character evolves through the game. It's a gem. It's a AAA game. It's in everybody's top 50 SNES list, including mine. And it has to be on a SNES Classic. End of. And if exploration isn't your thing and you want a more straightforward platforming affair, but you want state-of-the-art graphics while you jump from ledge to ledge, you could do a lot worse than Donkey Kong Country, Donkey Kong Country 2 and Donkey Kong Country 3, and I believe that the SNES Classic will have the entire trilogy available to its consumers. What can you say about Donkey Kong Country? That hasn't been said a million times before. The graphics were designed on Silicon workstations, so they were state-of-the-art pre-rendered sprites. Fitting them down onto a Super Nintendo cartridge looked like witchcraft at the time, especially as this was the dawn of the PlayStation and the Sega Saturn era. Seeing these sprites on a measly 16-bit machine was just a sight to behold. And the moment you go underwater in Donkey Kong Country 1, it's an unforgettable moment. The moment that ambient music comes in, along with the graphics, the visual style, and it's just a euphoric experience, or it was at least back in the day when these technological marvels were initially released. I think that Nintendo will pay homage to Donkey Kong, and I think they will pay homage to the influx of consumers that these graphics in these games brought. Gameplay wise, it's tight, they're a fun trilogy to play, but man, those graphics were like nothing we'd ever seen before on a 16-bit machine. Taking a visual step back again though, however, and going back to the launch days of the Super Nintendo, what would be a collection without a sports game? And there are two sports games in the running. The first of which is Super Tennis, which is considered by many to be one of the finest arcade-style tennis games ever released. People still play it to this day in tournaments. I found it a lot of fun, although I do think it has been superseded by the Mario Tennis games nowadays. However, it's still culturally important, and especially in the SNES's life cycle, so I think it will make an appearance on the SNES Classic, and I also think, for the exact same reasons, we will see Super Soccer also on the SNES Classic. While Super Soccer hasn't aged well at all, it was, for the era, a really important title. It's since been superseded by FIFA, it's since been superseded by International Superstar Soccer, which in turn got superseded by Pro Evolution Soccer, but back in 1991-1992, Super Soccer and Super Tennis were the absolute business if you were a sports aficionado for the Super Nintendo, and I think they will be represented in the unit. So those are the guaranteed games. Now we're on to the likely list. These are games that I think, well, they don't really have many obstacles as to why they would not be able to be put in the SNES Mini. It's just a case of whether Nintendo and the companies that release these games decide that they want them on the system. These are going to be fairly quick fire, so don't blink, that way you won't miss any. First off the bat, Chrono Trigger, one of the most famous SNES RPGs of all time. Nintendo have a good friendship with Square Enix, so there is a high likelihood that this could be released for the system. Final Fantasy VI, known as Final Fantasy III in the US, same deal. Square Enix and Nintendo, they're great bedfellows. That relationship continues with the Nintendo Switch. There is a very good chance that this culturally important game will be released on the Mini. Super Mario RPG, again, the strong relationship with Square Enix and Nintendo merged together with a Mario franchise to make a wonderful, fun RPG that us Europeans didn't get because Nintendo are bastards. Just makes this collection even more desirable if you didn't buy the game already on the virtual shops for the Wii and the Wii U. Secret of Mana, same deal. multiplayer RPG, very interesting and a lot of fun. Great selection for a SNES Mini. Especially if that SNES Mini had a multi-tap accessory, which leads us into the next likely contestant, Super Bomberman. It could be Super Bomberman 2, 3, 4, 5, or the original game. One of those Super Bomberman games will be on the system. I will bet my ass on it. I will also bet my ass that Super Castlevania 4 will be on this compilation. Konami, they're no stranger to selling their soul and selling their licenses for a quick buck. There's not much quicker ways to release a game and make a massive profit off it than just release a ROM that's been available for years anyway and gain a profit. So I will be almost certain that Super Castlevania 4 will be on the SNES Mini Classic, along with possibly Zombies Ate My Neighbours, which was a great action-oriented multiplayer puzzle game stroke shoot 'em up. Well, that's not really a shoot 'em up, but I digress. That's beside the point. Legend of the Mystical Ninja. Again, Konami quite happy to sell their soul. What easier way than to make a quick buck than to just re-release a ROM of an already popular game? Congratulations, Insta Money. This also applies to Gradius 3 because you'll need a good shoot 'em up in a SNES Classic. To a lesser extent, they may do the same with Castlevania Dracula X, although Castlevania Dracula X wasn't as popular initially on the Super Nintendo. It did get a cult following later in life, but from the get-go, it was a bit shaky, so they may not, but probably they will. As I say, it's Konami and money. It's going to happen. And it has to be done. Contra 3, also known as Super Probotector, I reckon it's pretty much a shoo-in. I put it as a likely game, but I think it's a guaranteed one. Contra 3 is a fantastic shoot-'em-up. My only caveat is that the licensing with the gore in Germany turned it from Contra into Super Probotector for European markets. They may do a switcheroo and release Contra for the first time in the UK, or they may just release the bogged-down Super Probotector version. Either way, we will see some rendition of Contra 3, I am almost certain of it. Okay, but now that we've got the Konami junk out of the way, what are we left with? Well, Tetris and Dr. Mario, a double pack for the Super Nintendo, released by Nintendo themselves, two very popular franchises. The SNES Classic will need a puzzle game of some description, it fits the bill nicely. Alternatively, they could go for Wario's Woods, which is a lesser known game that was released a bit later in the SNES's life, but was a lot of fun. Okay, so moving from puzzle games to strategy games, there's only one that I realistically can say will fit the bill and is likely to be released for the SNES Mini, and that is SimCity. Now, SimCity on the Super Nintendo is an absolute joy to play. It was custom built from the ground up to work with a console in mind. It's got Nintendo emblazoned all the way through it. One of the disasters is Bowser crushing your city. I would love to see it on the SNES Classic, and it's a possibility. Other possibilities, and the reason I put them as possibilities is because the system will probably already be saturated with platform games, but as I said before, if you're doing Super Mario games and you're going to bundle a SNES system full of them, I believe that Super Mario World 2, Yoshi's Island, should be a part of that bundle. So I think that Yoshi's Island is one of Shigeru Miyamoto's favourite games. It's a beautiful, stylized platformer. It's my favourite Super Nintendo game of all time. I think it will more than likely be in the SNES Mini Classic. Also, the late, great Satoru Iwata's baby, Kirby. I think we will see Kirby's Dream Land 3 and Kirby Superstar as part of the SNES Classic. Okay, so that's the likely games out of the way. Now we're in the distinct possibilities. There's still a chance, but it's unlikely. First off, Earthbound. Why release it on a system when you can sell it for $10 a piece and people will still buy it? Super Punch-Out. There's violence involved and a bit of a racial undertone. Tetris Attack. Well, Tetris and Dr. Mario will probably take its spot. Mega Man X. Capcom like to brush Mega Man under the carpet nowadays, along with Super Ghouls and Ghosts, again due to the undertones of the graphics. Axelay, Konami game. Hideous Slowdown. It's pretty much forgotten about this day and age. I don't think we'll see it. Irem's Super R-Type and R-Type 3 for the same reasons. Kirby's Dream Course is a possibility, but I think they will stick to the platform-based Kirby games rather than the golf game. Final Fight 1, 2 and 3, even though Capcom are friendly with Nintendo, Nintendo don't want violence in their Nintendo SNES Classic, otherwise they'll have to put an age rating on the system, so it probably won't happen. Plock, great platform game, not popular enough, pretty obscure, even though it is an absolute delight to play. International Superstar Soccer, I think they will stick with their own first party Super Soccer, but I would personally prefer ISS Deluxe to be in there. Buster Move, if Tetris Attack and Dr. Mario don't scratch the itch for puzzle games, Buster Move by Taito would. Taito have had good licensing in the past with the NES Classic, it's a possibility. Secret of Evermore, again a Square Enix RPG, a relatively obscure one, not as good as Chrono Trigger or Secret of Mana, but still a possibility. Uni Rally / Uni Racers, an extremely fun if minimal racing game. I don't think it will fit the billing for a SNES Classic, even though I'd love to see it. Breath of Fire 1 and 2, great Capcom RPGs, but the SNES has so many good RPGs, I think those will be left by the wayside. Earthworm Jim 1 and 2, great platform games, more synonymous with the Mega Drive / Genesis though. I don't think they would waste platforming game spots on those two particular games. The same goes for Flashback. And also Pocky and Rocky 1 and 2. There is a slim chance that they might be released for the SNES Classic, but apart from me, who else knows those games? Probably not many people, and people will look at the SNES Classic and think, what the hell are those? Yeah, won't happen. And Sid Meier's Civilization, it's too much of an adult strategy game to be bundled in with the rest of the games that the SNES Mini would hold. It would be very much out of place, and only a small handful of people would really class that as a worthy place on the system's limited memory. Finally, other unlikely games that I don't think we'll see. We're going to move into the unlikely games, and I'm just going to name them and the reasons why. Lost Vikings, Blizzard and Nintendo don't have a great relationship. Wing Commander and the Secret Missions, it's unlikely because Electronic Arts haven't licensed any of their games for the NES Classic yet. NHL 94, you have licensing issues with NHL and it's an EA product. Super Turrican 1 and 2, great games, but Factor 5, the designer, has now gone belly up. Star Fox 2, as I mentioned before, we will get probably the original, but I doubt they'll release the prototype ROM for Star Fox 2. Batman Returns, by Konami, even though it would be a license to print money, it's a license that Konami may not have anymore due to the Batman logo and the Batman license, plus it's violent content which brings that age rating back in. UN Squadron, it's an anime license, probably won't be able to be released on the system. NBA Jam and NBA Jam Tournament Edition and NBA Hang Time, NBA license for basketballers, probably not going to happen. Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, Turtles in Time, Turtles license, probably not going to happen. Stunt Race FX, great game, made by Nintendo. Nobody cares about it except me, it seems, probably won't be in there. And completely the opposite way around, Super Star Wars, Super Empire Strikes Back, and Super Return of the Jedi will probably not be featured on the SNES Mini, purely because the Star Wars license will be an astronomically high cost. Super Smash TV, ultra brilliant game, ultra violent, not going to be in there as it will raise the age rating up. Same goes for Mortal Kombat 2 and Doom, even though it is a technical masterclass and easily the most visually impressive SNES game there has ever been, it will not be on this system. Finally, due to the mess with Rare and Microsoft and what have you, I don't think we're going to be seeing Killer Instinct on the SNES Classic, plus the whole violence bringing up the age rating comes into play yet again. Anyhow, those are my thoughts for what games we could and could not be seeing on the SNES Classic Mini. Are you guys pumped for the system, even though it's still a rumour? Because I am really excited. I'm going to make sure I don't miss out like I did with the NES Classic, and I'm going to jump on pre-orders the second it comes. What do you guys think? What games would you love to see on the console? Let me know, and don't forget to comment, down below with your suggestions and your games that you want to see on it. And subscribe to me if you want more content like this. I'd really appreciate it. Until next time, bye for now.